All right, let's head over to the Zoom recording studio in the sky where we've got Mr. Warren Martin on the line with us, Kansas Strong. How you doing there in Kansas?
We're doing great here in Kansas. It's great to be with you, Jason.
Modern technology. Here I am in the spectacular studios next to the swamp in Minnesota, in right by the river, basically, where I have my summer residence. And you're in Kansas, and we have a cloud recording studio through my phone and my computer and your computer. Warren, what a day we live in, huh? What a modern time we
Yeah,
live in.
and
It's almost like, we're in magic time.
that's an amazing. And I'm more amazed that you have a summer residence. I only have two residents. One is my bed, and the other is when I'm not doing so well, the couch. And my wife lets me know which one of those residents I'm going to live at.
I should mention too, I do not have a winter residence yet. So I happen to be a point in my life where my son, he just graduated last year. And so I'm 45 minutes away from Fargo. And basically I needed the umbilical cord still, single parent, raising my kid and that sort of thing. But Warren, you'll appreciate this. He's 19 years old and just became one of the youngest and maybe the youngest in modern time firefighters for the city of Fargo.
No,
He scored amazing in his interviews. He starts August 3rd, so right around the corner. And I couldn't be more proud. And it gives me enough courage as a father to say, okay, now I can go get that winter place and, figure out what I'm going to do next because, hey, he's in the next chapter of his life. And now I just get to be the ATM and, that sort of thing in life, Warren. So you, of course, have daughters, so a different journey, but same experience as Warren, huh?
congratulations. That's great to hear. Congratulations for him.
Well, thank you much. And you know what he told me? He said he hopes he gets to be the person that gets to go to schools and teach them fire safety.
Yeah.
I said, boy, you'll be a natural. Boy, a young guy like you, who knows? But anyway, so that's enough about me. Let's get to you. You're changing the conversation. Public television, Glenn Beck, radio stations across Kansas as well as other areas. Let's get a little bit of a recap on that. And anybody who's interested, we've got about 3 or 4 interviews leading up to this, but let's just kind of give a little bit of a quick recap on what's going on, where people can find it, and kind of the rationale, if you will, behind what's going on in your summer campaign.
Yeah. So we did a kind of summer campaign. Part of that was a TV show with Viewpoint with Dennis Quaid, in which they did a mini documentary on Kansas Strong and our efforts to change the conversation about the oil and gas industry. That was released to public television stations around the country, went out to over 170 plus television stations around the country, just talking about how we're trying to take the oil and gas conversation, the energy conversation out of the realm of politics and really look at it from a human perspective and enabling people to have the information to choose their best energy future. And they saw that as an innovative approach to the conversation and did a mini documentary on that. We also have a campaign going with Glenn Beck at this time. It's called our Oil is Good campaign, and really kind of, again, changing the conversation, breaking that frame. Everybody wants to have a conversation with a framework around energy that's come through the decades of these conversations. And most of the time, that framework does not consider all of the valuable assets, all the valuable ideas and innovations that oil and gas has allowed to come to the forefront, to enable us to create the lifestyle that we have today. And if you're going to have any valid conversation about energy, you have to talk about the good side of oil and natural gas before you begin the discussion about where do we go next. Because you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and completely destroy our economy and destroy our lifestyle by making energy decisions without having that understanding of what is it that makes the world go round right now. And what makes the world go round? 56% of all energy in the world is produced by oil. Over 6,000 raw materials are used to make billions of products that we depend upon every day that are made from oil. And so, how do we move forward? And the only way we can move forward and choose our best energy future is if we understand where our lifestyle has come from, what's enabled us to live the way that we live today. And so our Oil is Good campaign, we're broadcasting that. Glenn Beck did some commercials for us that are being broadcast on radio stations across the state of Kansas. And really just driving home that message. Oil is good. You go to our website, you get some downloadables, you get a little bit of information, and hopefully it can start the conversation about how do we move forward in creating our best energy future. So both of those are really good. We also do radio shows on numerous radio stations across the state of Kansas in addition to those two campaigns, where these are longer format conversations. I think the shortest one is 8 minutes. Some of them go as long as 30 minutes long, where I go to sit down with a interviewer and I have no idea what we're going to talk about before I get there. And they are being fed by the news of today. And I try and bring a perspective that, again, breaks that framework and looks at it as a more holistic approach to energy, and really help people hopefully have a better understanding of what it is they need to know to be able to make good choices when they go in the ballot box, when they're choosing what they're going to do in their life, how they're going to live, and give them that background information.
I'm going to change up the order a little bit here, Warren.
Okay.
We're going to talk about your employee appreciation event next, but I want to talk about the BBB, which is a weird acronym to call it. The Better Business Bureau is what most people know the BBB as, but we're talking about the Big Beautiful Bill.
Yeah.
And sorry, I'm just real time putting together the I don't want to call it design confusion, but maybe it's an unintended consequence of confusion when people are seeing BBB because they think the Better Business Bureau automatically thinks small business. And ironically, this bill is not very good for small business. And so when I take a look at what's going on here, Warren, I'm having a little bit of a holistic by the swamp moment here. So swamp talk, we're going to call this right now. Oh, look at that. I just made another play on words, another pun, because the swamp. I try not to get political, Warren, but it's difficult in the oil and gas industry because sometime after the year 2005, it became very political. When I was growing up, gas prices was about what people complained and fought about for the most part. Have you had a chance to look at the Big Beautiful Bill? And in Kansas, you've got stripper wells and non-traditionals and small businesses, where it's a family. That's the oil company. And I've brought this up before that I came from the print industry originally, the newspaper industry, which was a monopoly in about 95% of the cities in the United States. And we went through our paradigm shift in 2008 to 2012. And there was all these bills too big to fail and a number of different things. And at the end of the 5-year period, about 90% of the newspapers declared bankruptcy. And you had this paradigm shift of the internet come in and social media that gave away the information for free. And it changed the whole narrative of what Associated Press writers were and what was news and what was opinion and what blurred the lines, and it created a lot of chaos, the Tower of Babel. And Warren, that's what I see right now. A lot of that shift is happening where this Big Beautiful Bill just ushers in so much of corporate America to control the energy industry. My heart bleeds right now for all the small business owners, not only across the United States because of what the oil and gas industry literally represents for the economy, but those small business mom and pops that have been keeping the small town going. I mean, the unintended consequences and ripple effect in my head from this Big Beautiful Bill, I need to step back because I'm a Libra, and it just keeps going and going and going back and forth, Warren. So talk me off the ledge. Help me understand what's going on with your interpretation. You represent a lot of small business owners, Warren.
Yeah. In Kansas, I'd say that it's almost all small business owners that are here. I'll change your BBB I've started referring it to as the OBBB, the one big beautiful bill. It makes it a little clearer to understand what we're talking about. But there's a lot of good things actually in the one big beautiful bill. There was a lot of good intent that was placed in it. It does open up makes some really good moves in regulation, in access, being able to really kind of push forward the idea of creating a strong, independent energy sector here in the United States. It rolls back a lot of things that were artificially inflating energy costs when it comes to electric vehicles, electrification, renewable energy, those types of things. But there's also a lot of issues with it. One is a lot of things that were written in the OBBB was dealt with environmental issues, and it's now being shown that those environmental issues that were approached in that have to have a 60 vote threshold to be changed because of the rules of the Senate that were going forward. And so how many of those environmental regulatory changes actually get implemented remains to be seen, and there's a lot of work that's going on behind scenes trying to get that worked out. And so I think overall the intent of the bill was really good for energy, but again, like you say, it's predominantly geared towards corporate energy, big oil, big companies moving forward. And the idea behind it was, the Trump administration really wants to keep energy prices low for consumers, and consumers really aren't seeing a price break. We're seeing electricity rates that are skyrocketing. They're expected to go up 13% by the end of this, from 2 years ago to the end of this year, up 13% electricity costs, predominantly because of the expanded use from AI, from data centers, those types of things where there's a huge energy demand. Electric companies are trying to keep up with developing that grid. At the same time, gasoline prices, are not dropping. They're maintaining, rising just a little bit right now. And so it's kind of got people looking at going, what's going on? Because crude oil prices have been lowered. And we've seen Saudi Arabia came out and said, well, hey, we're going to put more oil on the market. They missed their mark, but they still put a significant amount of oil onto the market that normally historically would have lowered the cost of crude oil, but the cost of crude oil actually went up when they put the oil on the market. And so it's really kind of, we're in this world where everything is a little bit off kilter. And I think it really speaks to how we need to look at approaching energy moving forward. It has long been held, as you talked about, back when we were kids and we were growing up, everyone was complaining about the gas prices, and everybody knew that if you wanted to lower gas prices, all you had to do was get the price of crude oil down. And, the Trump administration has called for trying to get that back to below $2 a gallon gasoline at times, and we're not anywhere close to that. And I think there's a misconception there that if we just lower the price of crude oil, energy prices across the board will begin to drop. And that's not what we're seeing. And the reason we're not seeing that is because something happened during the pandemic when inflation took over. Regulatory changes were put in place. The amount of regulation that was put in place artificially inflated energy costs that had nothing to do with the product itself. So when we were growing up, crude oil would account for 80% of the cost of a gallon of gasoline. Today, crude oil accounts for less than 50% of the cost of gasoline. The rest of it is accounted for in taxes, marketing and distribution, refining costs. All of those have been inflated in recent years because of regulation, because of inflation, because of the cost of energy to run electricity and being able to run those. And so right now, your bottom line on gasoline, if you paid nothing for crude oil, you would still be paying $1.60 per gallon for gasoline, paying nothing for the crude oil. So there is a limit to where we're at. And we're seeing that limit right now. You're seeing drilling counts beginning to drop. You're seeing production beginning to drop. You're seeing companies that Exxon came out and said that they're expecting a $1.5 billion hit in the second quarter because of the lower cost of crude oil. And so you're really seeing a dynamic that's taking place here where we're kind of at that threshold. You bring that down to the small business world here in Kansas, and we're predominantly stripper wells. That's a significant portion of our oil and gas production. Stripper wells account for 15% of the oil that is produced in the United States. That 15% is significant because it makes us the number one producer of oil in the world. And so to lose that 15% would be disastrous for the United States. And so we're working within those tight margins where we're right on that precipice, where if we go much lower on the crude oil prices, it really impacts us. And therefore, our energy discussion needs to be moving forward, really looking at where these artificial inflations are coming from on the regulatory side, on the environmental side, on the electricity side. For instance, you could lower the price of gasoline tomorrow by taking the federal tax, road usage tax, out of gasoline by 18 cents. You could lower the cost of gasoline 18 cents just by removing that tax, which is interesting because electric vehicles don't pay a road usage tax. Even though their vehicles for the same size car are much heavier than an internal combustion engine car, they use the road as much as an internal combustion engine car, and they produce more wear and tear on a road than an internal combustion engine car, yet they pay no road usage tax. And so it's really the energy future can't just look at the product that we're producing the energy from. We actually have to look at the entire supply chain that gets that product into a form of energy that then goes to the consumer. And how do we lower the cost across the board, not just by hitting at the source of the energy?
One of the ways I think small business is going to be impacted through this, the more I was looking at it, we've got a number of content sites that we manage here, and I get to see different articles that go through. Some of them don't always make it on the Crude Life. They make it on some other sites like the energy site, or we even have an ESG site that's picked up activity in the last year to where we can't even ignore it anymore. We were trying to ignore it for a year. And that's what's really kind of got me concerned, because what I'm reading about this is it does usher in ESG metrics. Whether they call it ESG or not is irrelevant. It has a trackability accounting metrics that's based on the ESG framework. And if I'm going to compare that to the print industry, the newspaper industry, and the magazine industry that got taken out by the paradigm shift of the internet, what really hurt the newspaper industry was two things. Number one was Craigslist. People started giving away classified advertising for free where the newspaper would charge for it. And in the newspaper's world, that classified ad page was Profit City because you didn't have any news stories on there. It was 100% paid advertising, but people liked it because they wanted to know who was selling a lawnmower and where the garage sales were. So it was a cash cow for the newspaper. Well, Craigslist took that out. I read studies where the LA Times, they lost 90% in their classified advertising revenue in 1 year. Just to give you an idea how that paradigm shift happens. The other part, and this is where I was attuned to it, was the social media side, because you had the rise of public-private partnerships, you had the rise of too big to fail, you had the rise of economic infusions of money. And every single one of these new businesses or dollars that came in was tied to social media. And they were giving away the information for free. That'd be like if the government gave a bunch of people money to go show up at all these small businesses for the oil and gas industry, take their product for free and give it away. And so the newspaper industry got hit hard from like 3-4 different angles, and that's just two of them. And I see that with the ESG metrics, as far as a new layer of cost that these small businesses do not budget for, they don't anticipate. They have absolutely no idea what to budget for it because it's a new cost. and all of a sudden they got to report to this person and this person on a state, county, and federal level. Warren, I don't know if I'm talking too abstract, or if I'm talking too much in the history, or if I'm just still sore from the newspaper industry. My original love getting taken out within about 3-year period. There's a lot of parallels here, but I see that kind of that ESG and that accountability and the tracking of the carbon credits and the environmental, if you will, being kind of that new cost that the small businesses might not be able to absorb. And the corporations, who cares? They're going to get bailed out by the government or by the shareholders, and they got 5, 6 safety nets in place. So, talk to me a little bit about that. Are you seeing anything like that?
Well, that's exactly what I was talking about earlier when I was talking about the regulation and environmental issues that have artificially inflated the energy costs. A lot of those were written into law over a long period of time that got deeper and deeper, got more expensive, higher fees, slowed down the process, all of those things. That's kind of what you're talking about there. And that definitely has impacted the industry as a whole. And those are the very things in the OBBB. I'm not going to get it right.
It's too
The,
hard.
it's
The,
too
the
hard. But,
BBB, man, it's too
yeah.
easy. BBB.
So
Anyway,
that's the things in that bill that it really remains to see. Can any of those be rolled back? Can you? Because that's where the reduction in energy costs needs to occur first, is in those areas right there. I will point out one major difference between the newspaper industry and the oil industry, because of what you're seeing happening is somewhat what is happening in the oil industry. But in the newspaper industry, if you lost your small town local newspaper, then it could easily be replaced by social media, by a website, by it could be replaced by some other form where you could get your news in your local town when your local newspaper shut down. That's not the same in the oil industry. Most of those stripper well producers that are out there, and the vast majority of the producers that are here in Kansas, are producing oil wells and leases that the majors have walked away from, and the majors aren't going to come back to. It's not a situation where if you push out the small businesses in the oil industry, that's okay, because the larger companies will pick up their production and continue to produce that oil. They've already walked away from it. They're not going to come back. You push out the small producers in the country, then those wells are shut in. Those wells are done. No one else is going to take them over and going to run with them. And so that is a big difference between our industry and a lot of other industries, where I think we need to, in moving forward in our energy future, we need to be cognizant that that 15% of oil production that comes from those small wells that the majors are not going to go back and pick back up, that's a significant addition to our supply. It's a significant addition to our energy security, and it's something that we need to be careful about, that we don't lose those. And as we're looking at these policies, as the governments are looking at the policies, I hope that they are taking that into account and looking at modifying those policies to make it more able for those small producers to be able to stay in business, and by increasing their margins, by reducing those regulatory concerns that they have, the monitoring that is called for, those types of things that are added costs that add nothing to the product. And where we already have studies that have shown over and over and over that there is no real endangering effect that comes from those small wells that make those regulatory actions necessary. And so, that is a very significant difference, is that it's not like if you push out the small businesses, someone's going to replace them. They're not going to be replaced.
it's interesting. I was having some flashbacks of what happened in the newspaper or the print media during their paradigm shift, because one of the arguments that we made back in the day was that there's only the internet is only there's only 10% of the people on the internet creating original content. The other 90% is a reaction to that 10%. And that's the way the newspaper industry kind of turned into, where you had these Associated Press writers and then some, magazine writers and some people like me that would go out and try to produce original news as the source. You go and interview the source. You don't react to something you read somewhere else. And just to give the audience an idea, there was an old famous news anchor called Walter Cronkite. And Walter Cronkite was a news reporter. He might editorialize, but that's not what you remember about Walter Cronkite. He would just deliver you the straight news. Jim Lehrer from PBS, I guess, would be the modern day one. If he's still around or not, I don't know. Jon Stewart on the Daily Show, he's a reaction. A lot of people say he doesn't do any news. Jon Stewart produces zero news, but people think he's a news show. No, he's a reaction. Bill O'Reilly, Rush Limbaugh, these are reactions. Okay, a lot of people think they're news, but they're not. And so what happened in the newspaper industry was such heavy funding went to nonprofits and point of views, if you will. It took out that 10% that was just trying to call a chair instead of calling it an enhanced table. And when you have social media thumbs upping things and liking things, and you got the right people in power doing certain support, well, all of a sudden a chair is an enhanced table if enough people call it that. And so the news really did change. And when I think about the oil and gas industry, and I'm not going to dog ethanol, but a lot of people complain that ethanol is not a superior form of oil and gas. That's what I look at, Warren, is that what we're living in today's world is going to be less real and less authentic than what we could have, much like what happened to our news and information. So much of our information now is so polarized and opinion-based, the average kid has no idea what's up and down anymore. Well, I'm not going to get political, but the average kid doesn't even know what a scientific male or female gender is when the chromosomes come out. So we got some real issues here, Warren, not to get too out of it, but I'm looking at that, what you're saying, and if this percentage goes away, you are losing the heart and soul of the industry. You really are. And that's what we're talking about, Warren. We're talking about the heart and soul of the industry, aren't we?
Yes, absolutely. You're talking about, we're talking about the environment. You're talking about producers that actually live in the towns where they're producing. They care as much about the environment as anybody because they breathe the same air, they drink the same water, they go to the same churches, they eat at the same restaurants. They intimately care about the work that they're doing in the small communities that they're working in. They're as close to the land, they're as close to the source, they're as close to the communities of any oil and gas company that exists in the United States or even around the world. So, that very much is the heart and soul of the oil and gas industry. It certainly is here in Kansas. We have more stripper wells than any other state in the United States, except for Texas. And Texas has enough major oil companies that their oil industry could survive even if they lost all their stripper wells. Ours, on the other hand, would be completely it would completely go away because that's predominantly what we are. And I do believe that we are the heart and soul of the oil and gas industry. I believe we're the front lines of our energy future and where we're going next, and how the government, how the people of the United States respond to where we're at energy wise right now. And so I think it's a great time to have the conversation of what is it we're really talking about. Everyone wants to talk about energy independence. Everyone wants to talk about energy security. And everyone understands that those two things are what really set America apart in a very significant way and make us, in addition to our military and all our other things, which couldn't function without those two things. Those are kind of the drive, that's the energy and the products that drive everything else that the United States does. And so to lose that 15% would be disastrous to the United States. And so we really need to be having a more sincere conversation about the heart and soul of our industry. And it very much includes those small well independent producers that are closest to the communities in which they work.
Getting some real raw, authentic crude talk here as we're kind of in real time processing the big, beautiful bill, or the one big, beautiful bill. And in kind of a closing on this, and then we're going to get into the employee appreciation celebration that Warren has coming up here. And it's a little bit different of an employee appreciation. This is the ones for the people who don't normally get invited to the trade shows and events and that sort of thing. But my takeaway from the big, beautiful bill signed on July 4th, I found that very interesting because this really did set up a new railroad. It set up a new infrastructure for the carbon industry, for the tracking ESG transparency industry, in the same way that the United States set up the railroad and then they set up the interstate system. That's how I looked at it, Warren, when I was kind of my walk away and turn away was. And so, adapt or go the way of the dodo at this point, because boy, it seems like this is the future, the counting, the trackability, the carbon, the whole deal. And yeah, that was my takeaway. I'm not saying good, bad, or indifferent. I'm just saying, whoa, this is like brand new infrastructure set in, and the horse is already out of the barn on this one.
Yeah. And I think you're exactly right. I think it does set up a new scenario. It does produce a new framework for moving forward on the issue of energy. I'm not a politician. I don't get involved in politics, but I very much represent the producers that are here in Kansas. And, my passion is to ensure that as we move forward and as that framework is being developed and the picture of our energy future is being painted within that framework, that we do not forget the independent small business producers that are out there producing that 15% of America's oil. They are a vital part, and they need to be a part of our energy future. They need to be a part of that picture that is built within that framework.
Warren Martin, voice of the voiceless, having a employee appreciation event in Kansas. Is this one in Garden City? Is that right? I didn't write it down.
Yes,
is
it's
it the
in Garden City.
Okay, Garden City. It's coming up here in the next week or so. Let's get the details and the rundown and kind of clarify a little bit about what employee appreciation means, because that is a cliche that people overuse.
Yeah, and we don't use it at all. So we call ours our oil field workers celebration. And it's an event that is meant to celebrate the men and women who are out in the oil field or working in the offices behind the scenes, that, like you said, they generally don't get invited to the conferences. They don't get invited to the cocktail parties. And we want to bring them together, and we want to celebrate the work that they do, the hard work that they do. If you've been on a rig, it is hard, dangerous work. And we want to celebrate them for the great job that they're doing. We're holding in Garden City on July 24th. It'll be from 5:30 until 8:30 on July 24th. It's a time where we just invite all those rig hands. We have them that come in off of the rig still covered in oil. They come straight from the rig, come straight from the offices. They show up. We give them a free meal, free drinks. Everything is free to these workers that are coming in. They're allowed to bring a +1, and it's just a time to say thank you to them. We're giving away over $4,000 in raffle prizes, and I'm not talking about little trinkets. I'm talking about grills and pressure washers and earbuds, some binoculars, really cool things that we're giving away. We got a full toolbox that we're giving away at this event, and it's just a way to say thank you. And we take just a few minutes at that event to share with them a 30,000-foot picture of the oil and gas industry and how the job that they're doing, the job that they do every single day, plays a part in creating that world in which we live. The greatest world that we have ever been a part of, where we're able as humans to do things that no other point in human history people were able to do, because of the energy and products that these workers are working every single day to produce. And we just want to remind them of that every single event. This is our 4th one that we've done, and the previous 3, every single event, I've had people that have come up to me after the event and said, You know, I've been doing this job for 10 years, 12 years, 15 years, whatever. I've been doing this job, and today was the first day I was really proud of the job that I do. And that's our goal, is we want people to understand why they should be proud to be a part of this industry, why they should be proud of the job that they do, because really the oil industry is one of the last bastions of work that you can go into, where you can go in without an education, you can go into without any experience. And if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to use your head, be innovative, and really apply yourself, there is no limit to how far you can go in the oil and gas industry, especially among independent companies. You talk to a lot of these independent producers here in Kansas, many of them started driving a truck or working on a rig, and they rose up through the industry to become producers themselves. That doesn't happen in very many industries. And so this is a time for us to just kind of celebrate who we are as an industry, who they are as workers in that industry, and it's just a time to say thank you. Thank you for the job that you do.
July 24th, is that right?
That's correct.
In Garden City. And I have in my notes on August 24th, Kioga, Kioga, is having an event going on there too. And that's is that the oil and gas industry in Kansas? What is Kioga, and is my notes right with the event?
So we have two different organizations, membership organizations that hold conferences in Kansas. One is Kioga, the other is ECOGA. ECOGA is the Eastern Kansas Oil and Gas Association. It's shallower wells. A lot more of it is water flood types wells, and so they kind of have their own organization that represents their interest. And then on the west side of the Nemaha Lift, you have predominantly Kioga, which is the Kansas Independent Oil and Gas Association. It is the membership organization that does all the politics, different from me. They do all of the politics and the lobbying and pursuing those bills. And they are having their annual convention. It's a time for those Kansas Independent Oil and Gas producers to come together, learn about the issues, let their voices be heard on the issues, interact with politicians, interact with with different people who are leading in the energy space, as well as there's a great trade show that takes place there where people can learn about new products, new ways of doing things. And so it's a great event that takes place right here in Wichita, Kansas. It'll be happening August 24th through the 26th. Kansas Strong is always there. We're always represented there. We'll have our booth. We'll be giving away T-shirts at that event. And it's predominantly a place where I get to listen to producers, hear the issues that they're facing, and so that I can go back out into the public and help people understand even better firsthand what our industry is going through and what the citizens of Kansas need to know about our industry directly from the mouths of the producers.
Is that Wichita? Is that your capital? No, Topeka is the capital, right, of Kansas?
Topeka is the capital. Wichita is the largest city in the state. Wichita is where I would say probably the largest concentration of oil and gas companies are in Kansas are based in Wichita. We have them all over the state, but we have the largest concentration right here in Wichita. The conference actually takes place at Century 2, which is directly across the street from where I'm sitting right now. Our office is right here in downtown Wichita. And so Wichita's kind of a hub for the oil and gas industry, especially for Kioga.
I imagine too. It's just a straight shot from Oklahoma City too, and I mean it's much easier for a lot of out of town people to come for their annual thing. And I know in North Dakota, for example, they've tried having conferences in Williston and Watford City, which is the heart of where the oil activity is. But Bismarck, hey, just easier to go to Bismarck. That's where everybody is. That's where the fly-in happens. That's where the executives are going to show up and a number of different things. So. I was just curious about. Go ahead.
They always have the annual convention here in Wichita in late summer, in August usually. They have the annual convention here, but then we have a mid-year convention. Kioga has a mid-year convention, and that usually takes place in one of the surrounding oil hubs throughout the state, from Garden City to Russell, Great Bend. It kind of moves around each year to the different areas, trying to give the maximum ability for producers to come together to really voice their views and also to learn about what's going on in the industry, kind of a give and take that takes place at all of those. And that's really important. I mean, when you're talking, again, we're not major oil companies. What happens here doesn't come from the top and just triculate through the entire company. You're talking about a bunch of independent, innovative entrepreneurs that all have different ideas, and it really is a melting pot of innovation when they all get together, where they can learn from each other and where they can support each other and develop a voice for our industry here in the state of Kansas.
Pop quiz time here as we conclude the interview. One of my favorite betting colleges in March Madness is Wichita State. And they, of course, have one of the greatest jokes, dad jokes ever that you can have is that, hey, did you hear that Wichita State made the March Madness tournament? Well, that's a shocker. Of course, their nickname is the Shockers, Wichita State Shockers. Is that because of the oil and gas industry? I have absolutely no idea where that name came from. But as we're talking about the oil and gas industry, I'm starting to think here a little bit. Is that did the nickname Shocker try to, okay, it doesn't. Okay, you're shaking your head. Do you even know where it comes from?
It's a shock of wheat.
Oh,
a shock of wheat. So when they used to harvest wheat,
okay,
they would gather it together into a shock out in the field. And so it's more towards our agricultural community. But I guess that is the oil industry in some way, because a lot of Kansas agricultural families are able to continue and have been able to continue for over 100 years here in the state. Because in those lean years, a lot of times it is the oil leases. Kansas, 89 out of the 105 counties produce oil, and all of our counties, the vast majority of them are agricultural in nature. And during those lean years, the oil and gas industry really does support the agricultural community, in addition to the energy and the products through revenue that comes from the leases that are on their properties.
Yeah, that makes sense too. And for those people out there wondering, well, it's not out of the question because we've done a lot of Kansas history here and explained to the world several times that Kansas has this place in the oil and gas, annals of time to where it was a very important state. And during that time when it was a very important state was about the time when colleges were coming up, So in the same way, there's teams named after, agriculture, Aggies and that sort of thing. You've got the, the Houston Oilers and the Edmonton Oilers. So it's not uncommon to, carry that symbolism of a team all the way to, something along the professionals or college ranks. And that's for sure, Roughnecks and Leathernecks and a number of different names like that, whether it be from mining or from oil and gas. But anyway, sorry, a little pop quiz. There was a time in history when I knew every single Division I college nickname. And we were on a baseball trip from North Dakota down to Norman, Oklahoma, playing in the AAU tournament. And that was our entertainment because we didn't have phones and the internet was people quizzing me on college nicknames. That was our enjoyment, that sort of thing. So anyway, Warren, any final thoughts as we kind of conclude the interview here? We kind of went through the gamut today.
Yeah, we went through the gamut, and I'm gonna end by correcting you.
Oh,
I'm gonna end by correcting you, and I'm gonna correct you on this. There's absolutely no doubt that Kansas did have a major part in history of the oil and gas industry. There's absolutely no doubt about that. When you go back to 1915, you go back to World War I, its contribution to World War II, its creation of many of the majors that exist today or are parts of companies that are major companies today. Yes, we have that historic significant role. I believe with what we've been talking about today, with Kansas being predominantly marginal and stripper wells that are here in the state, I believe that we are the battlefront when it comes to choosing our energy future right now. And I believe that we are just as important right now as we were at that point in time, because as things go in Kansas, I believe that that is really going to determine our energy future as a nation. And so I see us just as important today as we were back in those days.
Warren Martin with Kansas Strong. He's got a campaign going, oilisgood.com. Garden City employee celebration, oil field worker celebration, July 24th. It's more than employee appreciation. Warren, appreciate the time today.
Thank you, sir.